Welcome to Storytime 64, our June Storytime for this year. This June's topic requests were the theme overall of sales and shopping centre experiences. Some of us, I think, have brought along some things that we may have bought one or two too many of at a sale. And they're looking testing in the background. I've gone with trying to look like I'm a staff member at the department store. I didn't have a little narrow pin badge, so I had to borrow one of Lloyd's conference ones. So my really glorious writing saying, "Hi, I'm Sarah" on there.
That's convincing.
But I think I've got the Maya look.
Yes.
So in addition to that, we had refusal to go back for things such as umbrellas, bags, trolleys, and so forth. Things to do with kind of raffles and prizes. So we had the unwanted or somewhat comical raffle prize, the one that's always in there. Unwanted inheritance, getting lost in the shops, and shopping centre interactions, including extreme car parks, getting the trolley with the bad wheel, finding your creation in the op shop, malfunctioning lotto machines. Now, I took a bit of license with that one and went with an old-fashioned turn the handle with the balls go round and come out type lotto machine. Thought that might be a bit more fun than the electronic sort. Something royal, in particular, the request was corgis. And broken carrying receptacles. Which I have in the main put into the poem for today. And then we had a request for a couple of characters, neither of whom are human characters. Wombot, the robot that Carter has created, and Broderick the cat. So that pretty much necessitated which human characters we would have in the story. But our little poem today to get us started off is on that subject of trying to not have to go back for anything, and also you're carrying receptacles maybe not doing their job so very well. It's called In One Trip. I didn't want to walk by twice. Inside an op shop window was a beaded bracelet I was sure I'd once threaded together with moments and memories and love. I didn't want to look too close. I took a basket and a box, a bag and a bulging trolley. I wouldn't turn around when it started to spit to get my brolly. The box was soggy, sad, and splitting at the joins. I didn't stop to switch it or to see the specials on the bakery chalkboard. My trolley tumbled over, and I lost a tangle of grapes and leafy greens. My bulky bag grew lumpy and began unraveling at the seams. My bread got wet, the apples bruised, the shampoo leaked and dripped. Soggy, bumped, and flustered, I made it in one trip.
Yeah,
very good.
Can relate.
Yes.
Yeah, one thing, like when you can't go back for the extra bag, you know you're going to need.
And today's story is called Everything Must Go. I don't want people to donate the raffle prizes, Fraser complained to Alina as they taped down some power leads connected to the community centre sound system. This is supposed to be funded by Broderick's blasted inheritance. Alina knelt down on the stage to face off with Fraser's huge, fluffy grey cat, Broderick, who was sitting in a basket that was supposed to be a prize hamper. Broderick narrowed his yellow-green eyes at Alina and said, "Meow," settling down more firmly into the wicker. Remind me again, Fraser, why on earth you want to get rid of all your inheritance? Alina rolled her eyes. giving up on filling the basket with anything other than cat and turning to the smaller prizes arrayed on a folding table at the edge of the stage. I want to know who I am without it, Fraser insisted. And so does Broderick, don't you? He scratched the cat under the chin, and Broderick immediately stopped glaring and began to purr like a motorbike. Has it occurred to you that the answer could be a person who struggles because he hasn't actually had to learn any common sense or life skills in the past? Alina asked. She wasn't sure why she was helping this extremely rich heir to a large Scottish estate to run a charity concert. Fraser just sort of appeared when Alina was on holiday in Scotland and had transported her temporarily outside of the realities of life. Quite appropriate, given that the main thing the two of them shared was a keen interest in Doctor Who. Now back on Australian soil and facing the day-to-day challenges of her job, flat, and more long-term friends and family, Alina did not appreciate Fraser's whimsical presence quite so much. Fraser's phone rang. He set aside the gaffer tape, ending any pretense of making a useful contribution to the setting up, and sat on the edge of the stage to answer. Hello. Oh, good, Chad. I was wondering if you could help me with the main raffle prize for this event I'm running. Alina rolled her eyes in his direction at the suggestion that Fraser, by himself, was running the event. She also rolled her eyes at hearing the name of the caller. Chad was an established rascal who had previously been mayor of a little town called Trotsam in the Australian countryside. There, the most nefarious activity Chad could get up to had been the import of illegal cat and dog treats and mischievously deceiving elderly local policeman Albert. Chad had, however, subsequently made his way to Scotland and attempted to kidnap Broderick in hopes of inheriting the golf links that Fraser's family owned. This was a long story, the essence of which was that it was in fact Broderick, the cat, not Fraser, the human, who was the heir to the estate. Rather than being angry with Chad like a normal human being, Fraser had promptly bonded with the man over their mutual love of golf. And then, when Broderick inherited, and Fraser found running the estate was rather too much for him, he had contacted Chad and offered him the property. Chad now presided over the golf links in the hotel, while Fraser seemed determined to give all of his remaining fortune to an Australian cat shelter. What he would do after this apparently didn't concern him. An attraction, Fraser was saying. I think the golf course is quite an attraction on its own, Chad. He paused. You got what? He blinked, looking somewhat alarmed. Oh, all right then. But you can give me a hotel stay for the prize, yes? After a little more of this rather muddled talk, Fraser hung up and turned to Alina. He got corgis. 5 corgis. The man thinks he's become royal. Doesn't he know Broderick is the mascot of the place? Alina chuckled and knelt down to finish putting tape on the cable that Fraser had abandoned. Fraser, Broderick is with you, here in Australia. You didn't include him with the estate. It's a bit difficult for him to remain the mascot under the circumstances. Fraser looked crestfallen and confused. Broderick will feel forgotten, he mumbled. Alina patted him on the shoulder. I don't think Broderick is really worried about that, Fraser. You're worried about it, and you think that he thinks what you think. I make that mistake sometimes too, although usually not with cats. Fraser nodded glumly. Chad has also added a very Australian attraction to the hotel lawns. Alina smirked. Is it a giant something, like the big rocking horse or whatever? She couldn't help feeling a bit smug that Fraser was possibly having some regrets. Sort of, Fraser sighed. Apparently the major attraction in Trotsam, where Chad is from, is some sort of large farm vehicle. He's procured a local equivalent. Alina snorted and dropped the old-fashioned lottery bowl spinner that she'd procured from a second-hand store. So there's going to be a huge tractor or something permanently parked out the front of the hotel. Fraser nodded miserably. A loud thwack at this moment signalled someone pushing through the swinging double doors from the entrance with too much in their hands. An elderly gentleman, clad all in black and wearing an unusual combination of rabbit ears on a headband and dark eyeliner, entered the hall carrying a heavy amplifier and multiple looped cables. "Hey," he called to them across the echoing wide wood floor. "I'm Carter from Iron Rabbit." Alina jumped down from the stage and went over to shake hands, then realized Carter's hands were too full and reached as if to take some of the load of cables instead. Carter jerked his arm away, pulling the cables out of Alina's reach with an alarmed squawk. "Don't touch," he commanded. "They're in a special order." Alina tried not to pull a face. "Okay, sorry." She waited for him to put down the amplifier. "I brought some things for the raffle," Carter told her. Alina threw a warning glance at Fraser. Carter slipped a backpack off his back onto the floor, and some of the coiled cables that he'd transferred to one arm slid over his elbow onto the ground. "Ah!" Carter knelt down and peered closely at each one before laying them one by one in a neat line. When this was done to his satisfaction, he opened the backpack. "I make little pet robots, you see," he went on, as though there'd been no interruption. "I gave some to my family at Christmas, but these two needed some alterations." He set two sturdy box shapes with ears and spindly legs on the ground, and they began walking around Alina, slowly spiraling closer to her until they stood at her feet. Alina knelt down. "Hello." She brought her nose down level with the bit of them that looked most like a face. "Hello, Carter," one of the robots intoned. "No, I'm Alina," Alina told it, laughing. Fraser climbed down from the stage, his eyes now wide with delight. "They're like K9, he declared, kneeling down as well. "They are not," Carter retorted, looking a bit hurt. "K9 is a wheeled metal box that can wag his tail. These little guys do lots more than that." Now it was Alina and Fraser's turn to look offended. Excuse you," Alina told him. "K9 does in fact regularly save the day." The swinging double doors burst open again before Carter could reply, revealing a second, black-clad older gentleman with a cymbal-shaped carry bag and a frustrated frown. "Excuse me," the man said. "Could someone give me a hand with the drum kit? I brought a trolley, but this car park is a bit extreme." They all trooped outside to work as a team on maneuvering the bass drum up the mountain-like slope to the door, and Carter put some bricks behind the back wheels of the band van. Broderick was left inside, asleep in the hamper basket on the raffle table. Broderick watched the humans scurry outside through one slitted eyelid. The wicker hamper basket was not in reality an especially comfortable place to sit. It was a satisfying place to sit because it frustrated that Alina human. Broderick was fairly certain it was Alina's fault that Fraser had brought him here, when his rightful inheritance included velvet cushioned armchairs and padded picnic blankets for pleasant weather outings. There was also the matter of James, the butler, who should have been continuing to bring Broderick salmon and provide him with fresh, fluffy blankets. Fraser had decided that he didn't want James to be their butler, for reasons that made no sense to Broderick. Unfortunately, the result had been that James infuriated Fraser by his inability to stop calling him Sir. James declared that he missed being a butler, actually, and then James went back to Scotland, leaving Broderick to find his own cushions and attempt to eat some chewy, gamey meat at meal times that apparently came from the big bouncing animals he'd seen once from a distance during a bike ride. Broderick was, on the whole, displeased. He eyed the objects on the raffle table beside him, reached out a lazy, spiteful paw, and knocked a plastic parcel of bath accessories to the floor. A jar of some sort of smelly seeds and nuts went with it and made a loud smashing sound. When the humans returned to the hall, puffing and pushing a lost shopping trolley full of band equipment, Broderick was crouched on the floor with one of Carter's robots. The robot was slowly circling the cat, and Broderick was periodically extending his paw and bopping the robot hard on the head. On the stage, a number of raffle prizes seemed to have escaped the small folding table, including a jar of dukkha, which had smashed. Oi! Carter let go of his side of the trolley, a mistake, given that everybody's hands were essential to holding up the pile of equipment stacked up on top. Several microphones, a set of drumsticks, a guitar tuner, and someone's folder fell out. Ignoring the chaos he'd just caused, Carter continued towards the cat. Leave Wombot 2.5 alone, he scolded, shooing Broderick away with his foot. Wow, swore Broderick, latching onto Carter's foot and sinking his teeth into his shin. Yow! Exclaimed Carter, trying to shake the cat off. Broderick began to thump Carter in the heel with his back feet. Broderick! Fraser exclaimed, rushing forward and letting go of his side of the trolley. A microphone stand began sliding in the direction of Alina's nose. Given this was the kind of scene that characterized the setting up and preparations for the evening, Alina was not expecting much from the event. It seemed, however, that the band, Iron Rabbit, were used to operating under chaos, and the crowd the event had attracted were enthusiastic supporters of either the band, the animal shelter, or both. Alina was surprised to discover that all of the raffle tickets and a sizable chunk of the entries for the Poor Support Lottery had sold by midway through the evening. This was unusual, given that besides Fraser's main contribution of a golfing holiday voucher, the raffle items were very much what you'd expect from community donations. There were Carter's robots, of course, which did not come with any instructions or information. Then there were some knitted stretchy rectangles adorned with crocheted flowers and bees, which the donor apparently intended as some sort of cozies for milk cartons. There was the ever-present bag of bath accessories that had probably been a freebie at the pharmacy or an unwanted prize from a sideshow game. And there was a pack of 10 inflatable pink rabbit costumes, which someone had presumably bought during a sale and later realized they had no real use for. All in all, nothing that stood out as highly attractive. But Alina wasn't about to complain. It was nice to think that they would raise a sizable amount of extra funds for the animal shelter, on top of the donation Fraser had guaranteed. She pretended, quite effectively, that it hadn't crossed her mind that Fraser could have used his fortune any other way. When it came to time to draw the raffle, it became rapidly obvious how they'd managed to sell out. Alina asked the Iron Rabbit's drummer, Nigel, to draw the tickets out of the hat. He held the first ticket, the lucky winner of the bath products, to the light. Yellow ticket, E59, he droned. Redraw if you wouldn't mind, Fraser called from where he'd settled at a table, waving the described ticket overhead. Nigel drew another ticket out. Pink, B3, he intoned. And again, shouted Fraser, the pink ticket joining the yellow one in his raised hand. Fraser, Alina hissed, leaning over the table. How many of the raffle tickets did you buy? Fraser showed her a little rainbow of paper pinched between his index finger and thumb. 50? Alina rolled her eyes. Okay, you're probably going to have to take those bath products in a minute, or people will start to get annoyed. She sighed. At least with the lottery draw, Fraser couldn't choose more than one set of numbers, so that should be less awkward, she thought. When the raffle draw was finally over and the golfing holiday prize had, to Alina's relief, actually been claimed by an audience member, Alina went up onto the stage and retrieved the old lotto ball spinner. You turn the handle, Fraser, she suggested. It's your event. With a little bit of persuasion in the form of gourmet chicken-flavoured treats, Broderick sat on the table next to the spinner, watching the balls go round so that his head nodded up and down like a bobblehead toy. Fraser turned the handle, looking cautious. The balls went around and around, and Broderick's head followed, making Alina dizzy. But none of the balls seemed to show any sign of dropping out into the tray. Spin it faster, Fraser, Alina suggested, frowning. Fraser did, and after what felt like quite some time, a single ball emerged. 16, Alina read out. Fraser's expression went oddly blank. He shrugged and began spinning again. Then he stopped, frowning and peering inside the wheel. What? Alina asked, leaning in. Fraser pointed into the barrel of the spinner. There's a broken bit. And it's still working, isn't it? Fraser shook his head. Those balls are stuck at the front. They're the only ones that can come out. Well, are there 7? hissed Alina through clenched teeth. Yes. Then what's the problem? No one will know. Fraser grimaced. They're my numbers. Alina picked up the ball spinner and dumped it down on the floor. Right. Apologies, everyone. We will have to use a number generator for this, it seems. Broderick, whose gaze was still trying to follow the balls, wobbled in place, fixed Alina with an angry, slitty-eyed stare, and said, "Wow," so loudly that it was projected to the entire audience via the MC microphone. No one seemed to really take in Broderick's displeasure, keen as they were to find out who won the lottery and get on to the second half of the concert. Broderick jumped to the floor and watched from there as Alina connected her laptop to the projector screen and set a number generator running. His tail twitched crossly in time with the irritating suspense music that played as the numbers popped up on the gaps on the screen. Hopefully that strange little mechanical wombat creature could be relied upon. When all the gaps were filled, no one immediately leapt from their seat to announce they'd won. So Alina, feeling that by now this had all dragged on a bit, told the crowd that if these were their numbers, they should email her with evidence to claim the prize, and ushered the band back on stage for their second set. Broderick clambered onto Fraser's shoulders, curled across them like a scarf, and settled down with a smug twitch of his whiskers. Fraser would not be giving up the last of his gourmet dinners and velvet cushions that easily. After the show, the crowd dispersed with a wave of chatter and screeching chairs and people having car parking disputes. And Alina and Fraser got to work stacking chairs, trying to help the band pack up and being told not to touch things. Carter waved a wistful goodbye to Wombats 2.5 and 2.6 as they made their way home in their new owner's hands. And Fraser tried to wind up the long extension lead they'd laid across the stage and got himself into a tangle. Alina, he said, as she helped to get both him and the cable unknotted. I have to tell you something. What? Asked Alina, feeling wary. Those were my numbers again. Alina spluttered. That's impossible. Double check, Fraser. She set the extension cable aside and folded her arms. Also, why did you enter the lottery to win the money that you provided? Fraser looked sheepish. I just wanted to participate in everything. Alina sighed. Well, you'll just have to donate the prize pot as well. Carter, who'd been laying cables in a box in a specific order nearby, shuffled over. You know it's the big end of financial year sale at the mall next weekend, right? He asked. If you're having trouble spending your money, I'm sure you could find some things to buy there. I'm going on a hunt for bargain electronics and a specific set of noise-cancelling headphones my sister wants replaced. Alina's eyes widened in alarm. I really think you should just donate it to the animal shelter directly, she told Fraser hurriedly. But Fraser's eyes were sparkling and Broderick was glaring again. I've never been to a sale like that, he breathed. Alina winced. Fraser, it's not a party. It's not orderly like an auction or something. People will practically run you over with trolleys to get to things before you. I really don't think you'd like it. But it was no good. Fraser's mind was made up. He would experience the sales. The following Saturday, a nervous Alina was stuck in a chaotic, steep, and maze-like car park of the mall, a shopping centre complex renowned for its enormous variety of stores and activities, and for the number of collisions between runaway trolleys and cars, prams, or employees. That one has their reversing lights on. Fraser pointed at a car in a parking space ahead of them. Maybe they're leaving. Alina edged along in first gear, gritting her teeth. Yes, but they're on the top of the hill, she spat. If they don't leave by the time I'm up there, I'll have to go past or I won't be able to start again on the slope. As if to prove her point, a rogue trolley came careening down the tarmac towards them and was caught just short of Alina's bonnet by a frustrated-looking person in high heels and leggings. The car with reversing lights on edged with agonizing care out of the parking space and around to the left, just as another vehicle appeared out of nowhere at the top of the hill and put their indicator on to claim the space. Ah! You plague on the human race, burst Alina, turning left because she had to keep moving. When they finally managed to park the car, Fraser clipped Broderick's leash onto his harness and straightened his Stuart tartan coat before placing the little red vest over the top that would allow Broderick access to a typically humans-only space. Safely attached, Broderick glared from Fraser's arms as Alina took a couple of canvas tote bags out of the boot. We're not taking too many bags, she declared. That way, there's a limit to how much stuff we can get. Fraser nodded with an expression that said he was out of his depth and was deferring to Alina's expertise. On the other side of the mall, Carter was taking the opposite approach, wheeling a large nano trolley along the footpath from the car park for the train park and ride. He was determined that he should not have to accept a single plastic bag on this shopping expedition. The trolley was very practical, and it seemed that this was a characteristic only socially acceptable for the possessions of elderly women, as Carter kept getting strange looks from his fellow shoppers. Some of them looked outright cross or offended at sight of him. Carter wasn't sure if this was because a relatively sure-footed older man was considered too capable to be taking a trolley. The other shoppers were offended at the relative ease with which he was able to navigate the rear car park. Or they considered his trolley to somehow be getting in their way as they rushed about. Alternatively, they might have been upset that he was wearing eyeliner. Whatever it was, he was definitely getting some disbelieving or even outright hostile glances. Now that they were out of the car, Fraser and Alina were having quite the opposite experience, owing to the presence of Broderick. The other shoppers were stopping, bumping into one another, cooing and beaming at the cat, some even pulling out their phones to take pictures without asking. Broderick, having previously been most unimpressed by the prospect of the sales, was now in modelling mode, curling around Fraser's shoulders with his whiskers held high, rolling on his back in Fraser's arms like a furry baby, and making small, curious sounds like "rut" and "pah" that humans generally seem to appreciate. It took Alina and Fraser some 20 minutes to make their way into the store entrance, by which point 15 strangers knew Broderick's name and 10 were tagging him in Instagram posts. Carter used the wide berth other shoppers gave him to his advantage, worming his way rapidly past a woman with 10 boxes of cheese straws propped between her fingertips and her chin, a child who was sitting on a giant plush dragon in the middle of the floor, and an individual with so many bags hanging off their joints that they resembled a centipede, into the nearest electronics store. There, he began rapidly collecting LEDs, sound sensors, and memory cards, and asking the shop assistants questions that sent them scurrying for their superiors. A young teen in a beanie and cargo pants nearly took the last remaining set of the noise-cancelling headphones Ella had asked for, but Carter said hello to him and remarked that the range was good in here, which prompted the teenager to stick his earbuds in and make a hasty retreat. Soon, Carter's trolley was full of electronics, Lego, some Lincoln Park hoodies that had been very cheap indeed, 15 packs of fancy coffee, 6 sets of black rabbit ears on headbands, 1 pack of rabbit-themed cookie cutters, a fluorescent yellow raincoat with a rabbit silhouette on the front, and a violin, which Carter did not know how to play, but figured he could learn. He made his way down a set of escalators and into a less busy area, leading out to one of the undercover car parks. He looked about, blinking in the gloom of the concrete structure with its fluorescent bulbs and blinking car lights. There had to be a way to get outside from here, right? Alina, Fraser, and Broderick had got as far as the food court, where Fraser had insisted on purchasing a green juice because he'd never had one before. Broderick wove in and out of the legs in the queue, getting stroked and offered bits of chicken from people's Subway sandwiches and KFC buckets. Eventually, Fraser unclipped the cat's leash to allow him to visit more of the food court's occupants, and Broderick got up on the table of a young couple who were sharing milkshakes and helped himself, much to their delight. Refreshments procured, they carried on into what Alina promised were the infinite weird wonders of a Kmart. Soon, Fraser was trying on shoes, perched amongst the chaos of discarded wrong-sized pairs, bustling shop assistants with boxes, the occasional lost stinky sock, and one guy who wanted their opinion on his sandals. Broderick didn't like it in the Kmart, so he climbed up the shelves and used this handy network of structures to make his way out of the store while Fraser was preoccupied with boots and Alina was preoccupied with ensuring Fraser didn't say anything posh. He followed close to the wall along the open mall walkway, past a gaggle of teenagers heading into the toilets together, around a seating area where lots of older people with trolleys were resting, through the surf shop where people smelling of hairspray tried to look casual, and stopped short at a familiar noise, the tweeting of small birds. Extremely pleased with himself, Broderick turned into the brightly lit nook, which was filled with chirping and rustling and the bubble of water. He ignored some complaining younger felines and settled in on top of what seemed to be a perfectly placed, soft new scratching post to watch the mesmerizing movements of a crowd of snack-sized fish in a tank against the wall. I am not going all the way back to the entrance to get a trolley, Alina was telling Fraser. As he struggled with an item neither of them had been able to resist, a heavy curtain with a TARDIS printed on it. No problem, Fraser replied, pretending to juggle his new boots and hitting himself in the nose with the curtain. My bag is definitely bigger on the inside. He stopped short at a shelf of strangely shaped light globes. Look, this is like a disco ball, only it goes on your regular light. He tossed the globe at Alina, who looked horrified as she tried to shift the full bag, stack of board games, and 2 coat hangers she was already carrying in order to catch it. I must say, Fraser, she declared, once the globe was safe, I'm surprised at how you're taking to this. I thought you'd hate it. Fraser shrugged, the TARDIS curtain lifting and lowering with his shoulders. It's not so bad being in a crowd when they're also interested in. He froze, staring around. Broderick! Oh no, sighed Alina. For a cat on a leash, I have to say this feline of yours spends an awful lot of time being lost. They hurried off in the direction of the nearest main thoroughfare, dropping things or changing shoulders with their bags every few steps. A trolley, Alina exclaimed, just as they came to the entrance of the Kmart. Sure enough, an empty shopping trolley sat, abandoned, at the front of the store, leaning up against a box of sad, soft toys that were marked down to $1 each, missing tags, ears, and bits of their odd, brightly coloured clothing. Alina and Fraser gratefully offloaded everything into the trolley and pushed it ahead of them as they began looking for an information point to report Broderick being on the roam. Fraser began tapping away at his phone as they walked, holding onto the trolley for direction as he tried to put out a message on Broderick's Instagram account, the Scots Paws. The change in their apparent visibility without the cat was dramatic. People bumped into Alina, who was definitely watching where she was going. They shoved past Fraser to reach the discounted box of soft toys, leaving him wide-eyed. And one child crawled right underneath their trolley and out the other side. Someone ahead of them stopped with their trolley in a horizontal position across the walkway, so that they had to dodge and maneuver past. Can you dodge and maneuver past? Good girl. It was also very soon apparent why this trolley had been abandoned, as it continually did its best to steer them into the middle of the mall, braked at random moments so everything almost fell out, and refused to turn corners. Meanwhile, Broderick was being approached by a young man with freckles and pimples, wearing a polo shirt with embroidery that said, "Hi, I'm Jack." Jack looked curious about Broderick in a way that set off alarm bells in the cat's mind. Broderick flattened his ears and hissed. "Kayla," Jack called out, not taking his eyes off Broderick. "Did we have an adult cat come in for adoption or something?" Jack's colleague made a non-committal sound from behind the cash register. "You're very pretty, aren't you?" Jack remarked, holding out a hand to stroke Broderick. "Meow!" screeched Broderick, lashing out at the hand with a swift claw-spiked paw. Jack leapt backwards. "Ah, Kayla, this is a really unfriendly cat." "Beep, bleep, woo!" came a chirpy noise from the floor. Jack and Broderick both looked down to see a small rectangular robot shifting from foot to foot at Jack's feet. "What are you?" asked Jack, kneeling down. Broderick leapt from the scratching post and fled out into the mall, almost colliding with the wheels of a laden trolley. "Broderick!" exclaimed Fraser, scooping the cat up. "Wombot 2.5?" Alina took a few steps closer to the pet store, kneeling down to meet the robot, which was trundling out as fast as it could, a confused shop assistant staring after it. She picked it up, and the robot made a pleased-sounding beep beep in response. Fraser, however, was staring past Alina and Wombot, Broderick firmly grasped his chest, at the pet shop window. "Oh," he said, in a soft voice that made Alina turn around. Staring out from the glass were 2 round, deep brown eyes. belonging to a corgi. Absolutely not, Fraser, Alina snapped. Meow, Broderick agreed. The two of them eyed one another with a begrudging sense of kinship. On Sunday, Fraser, Alina, Broderick, Wombot 2.5, and Freya the corgi sat in Alina's apartment, eyeing several of Saturday's purchases with dismay. The disco ball light globe had a screw-in fitting, which none of Alina's light sockets shared. Fraser, having tried on 6 pairs of boots, had somehow ended up with a pair 2 sizes too small. The TARDIS curtain did not come with hooks or rails, and all of Alina's windows and external doors had blinds on them. On second try-on, Alina didn't like the shirt she'd bought herself at all, and the coat she'd grabbed in delight didn't look as much like Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who one when she actually tried to layer it over anything. I think a charity donation trip might be in order, Alina sighed, pulling out some bags. As the 5 of them approached the Red Cross shop, Alina and Fraser were surprised to recognize Carter of Iron Rabbit standing at a box of old records out the front. Hi, Alina chuckled, waving to him. Was your trip to the sales a bit second thoughts too? Carter shrugged and shook his head. No, I got exactly what I wanted. I'm just here looking for musical treasures. He leaned in conspiratorially. I am having second thoughts about this trip, though. You see that painting in the $2 pile? He pointed at a basket propped just outside the doorway, in which a quite nice surreal landscape with planets in the sky was sitting at an angle. That's a collaborative piece my ex and I painted together on a romantic art workshop date. Fraser and Alina grimaced in sympathy. Alina, suddenly realizing what was sitting in her shoulder bag, turned to Carter with a grin. Hey, you'll never guess who we found running around the mall. She proffered Wombot 2.5. I guess whoever won him last week must have lost him. Carter sighed and took Wombot, sitting the robot in the crook of his arm. I hope they weren't trying to sell you for parts, he muttered. Beep, bleep, replied Wombot. Beep, boop, came an answering call from somewhere inside.
Oh.
Carter looked at Alina, making a face. I wonder which friend or family member's Christmas robot that is. They made their way inside, with a feeling of morbid curiosity. The robot, sitting on the shelf inside the door, was narrower than Wombot 2.5, resembling a bilby more than a Wombot. Carter ran a hand over the ear-like protuberances on its head. Hello, Ella, chirped the robot. Carter raised his eyebrows. Wow, I'm glad I fought off teenagers and went into 3 different stores to find her headphones. He remarked. Fraser's phone rang. Hello? He turned slightly away from the others, leaning against the shop doorway. Ah, right then, I see. Thank you very much for your honesty. He turned back to the others. The person who thought they'd won my golfing holiday prize has just realized they were misreading the ticket. And like a very good and honest human, they've owned up to it. Oh, replied Alina, trying not to sound as though she had opinions. Fraser looked at a bit of a loss. Broderick, who had been winding his leash around Fraser's legs, now leapt up to sit on Alina's shoulder. He nestled down and narrowed his yellow-green eyes at Fraser. Meow, he said pointedly. Beep, bleep, added Wombot 2.5 from the crook of Carter's arm. Fraser looked confused for a moment, glancing back and forth between them. Then he seemed to translate both cat and robot languages and looked at them all with a little of his old whimsical Doctor Who style sparkle in his eyes. Carter, he said, I don't suppose you like golf, do you? Carter blinked. A bit. Good enough, Fraser declared. Alina, what do you say to one more adventure? Alina hid her smile in Broderick's plume-like tail. I suppose I could, as long as you get me back here in time for the solstice. Fraser knelt down to look at Freya, the corgi. Come on, K9, he said. The actual solstice falls kind of in the middle between now and our July story, but it would make sense therefore for July, our next one, to be our solstice edition, if that works for everyone. I'll just have a look at the actual date of it.
I think it's the 8th.
Have a look.
July the 1st is Saturday.
Yeah. Not too far beyond the real solstice.
Weeks.
Lovely. So apart from solstice stuff, including all of our traditions that have come in over the years for solstice, are there some requests for next time?
I have one. Inspired by doing some sightseeing and seeing something like really historically, amazingly ancient and interesting, and it was just completely neglected as a tourist site, like no care taken, nothing. So I don't know, I guess some sort of like monument or statue or something of significance, except the community's just doesn't care. And it sort of sits at odds with whatever it is.
You know, monuments or ancient sites that aren't recognised.
You could have amateur archaeologists involved in that. I think that's quite fun. You know, like people with metal detectors and that kind of thing, because they are very funny.
Although I'm always jealous of people in England and Europe who actually could find Roman hoards and things like that, as opposed to in Australia where you don't. And then so when Fraser was saying he's going to get rid of everything, I'm like, no, you're antiques. Like, for someone in Australia who doesn't have like antiques to inherit or just find in an op shop, I'm like, no, keep the
antiques. The antiques are safe. Well,
okay.
When I say safe, under the care of Chad.
I'm sorry.
It might end up in Australia.
I think I'd like to hear a bit more about Chad.
Yes.
I'd like Chad to reappear at some stage. I think.
All right.
And then to counterbalance Claire's one, I think maybe, you know, those big attractions that you got out of your way to see, that you kind of go a bit like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I suppose it's all.
Yeah. All right. My funny thing for this month was there was a guy in my physics tube, and you know, like those balls that create static electricity, and like the ones in like the science center, you can make your hair go funny and you can touch them, get a little zap. Yeah. The tutor's like, you know, at the start of the session, this is a strong one, don't touch it. But this other guy, he's just like, can I get zapped if I touch it? And the tutor said, like, yes, you will get zapped. But what the kid was actually asking was, may I touch it and get zapped? And so then at the end of the session, he was super disappointed he wasn't allowed to touch it. He's like, but you said I could. It's like, no, I said you could get zapped. Yeah, you said I could. Like, how does he talk? And I'm like, oh, you could get zapped, but you're not allowed to.
Yeah.
But yeah, the difference between can I and may I, and when people interpret it as the sensible thing, like, why would you ask to get zapped, you know? That's just stupid. So I assume you're meaning hypothetically.
Yeah.
That's a nice one too to grab onto, like sensible questions.
Yeah.
And, you know, sensible questions and nonsensical questions. What about, okay, so I'm going to suggest another one in view of what Joan and Andrew posted about coming onto the story time, you know, after we see the Crows match.
Yes.
It's like watching sport to the death, even though the outcome is more than obvious.
Like you already know what's going to happen.
One side is drubbing the other, but you absolutely can't walk away or uncross your legs or, you know, go for a cup of tea or to the toilet or anything, because it will change the outcome.
It will change the outcome.
I have one I want to contribute, and then I need to go sleep as well. But the one I want to contribute is sort of for Mum and I. I don't know if you can see this, but this is our moon names chart. A couple of years ago, we came up with names for all the different moons that were kind of appropriate to Adelaide and the landscapes and weather and stuff here.
Yeah.
And we gave each of the moons some like concepts to focus on. So the one that we're in at the moment, we're still in Torch, Mum? Okay. So the relevant one for next story time is Torch Moon. And so the things are midwinter community gatherings, fire and silence, introspection, instructions and visions.
Oh, okay.
So any of those
list that go,
those would
like
be good.
About 3/4 of those go with the solstice.
They do, yes.
Already.
Yeah. One that we have on here also is listening to the earth.
Listening to the earth. That's
which
nice.
you could interpret kind of literally or not.
Yep.
Might have to have Ella bring him.
At the solstice, we've got lots of like setting, making wishes or setting goals for the future, but not much in the way of the sort of like fortune telly things like we do at Christmas with our trinkets, where we go, well, you got the trumpet trinket in your pudding, and that means there's music involved in your year ahead, or something like that.
Yeah,
the tradition.
That's nice.
I don't believe in it at all, but I kind of want to learn tarot just for fun, you know?
Yeah, I'm in that boat. I know how to do it a bit, and I don't believe in it as a fortune telling thing, but I do think it's very useful as a introspection tool, as a way to like think creatively about problems.
Well, that's it.
Or like view this issue through this particular sort of lens.
What if you thought about this problem you're having this way?
For your interest, when we were at university, Jane, my sister Jane, who's just off camera just now, bought a pack of tarot cards and sort of learned how to read them. And she had a funny little bedroom because she couldn't, you know, bear to share with me because I was a goody two shoes and she wasn't. So my dad converted a laundry, which is a very small room at Grattan Street, if those of you who can remember, and he just boxed off the door to the back door, and the rest of the laundry became Jane's bedroom. She had that for years. And he built her a bunk, so the upper bunk with a ladder, and underneath was the wardrobe. It was very clever. So she started reading these tarot cards, and she said, I'll read your tarot cards. And so I went into her room because she had to have a quiet space.
Yeah.
And we both sat on this top bunk and she laid out the cards. And I don't think she even got started, but I just got so spooked.
No,
I just went, I can't take it. And but I don't believe in all that fortune telling type thing. I don't at all.
But and you got really spooked by it nonetheless. When someone says
she must have created the atmosphere.
This old house haunted, somebody says, and you're like, well, I don't believe in ghosts, but you still don't really like walking around in it at night. Or
That's right. That's right.
So
that's right. Superstitions that you do not believe in, but you're also a little bit you're wary of. You don't walk under those.
I
have an interesting concept, like superstitions you don't believe in that still affect you in some way, or you sort of nonetheless.
I think Claire and Sarah, we were talking about that when we had our chat the other week, and because I was reminded of the mayor in Iceland when I was there, who said this really great thing where I was asking him about elves and how many people really believe in elves, because there's this sort of stereotype that all Icelanders kind of believe in elves. And he said, well, I don't believe in elves, but I don't believe in my knowledge either. And I thought that was really good.
Oh, that's very wise.
I think that's a really good attitude to life.
Yeah.
Like,
David White,
you don't believe in your knowledge because you don't know what you don't know, do you? So
exactly.
With our solstice edition this time, I thought it might be fun. We always sort of have the list of the traditions that our characters do, and we can do those as well. But what I thought might be quite fun is to kind of invite everyone, if you want to come up with something of your own that, you know, this is our solstice tradition that we're going to do for the solstice this time, or add in as something that we do each time. So have a think whether there's something different that you like to do, or a different thing that you'd like to be your recipe that you make, or that, you know, an idea that you could suggest to us all that we have a go at. It's making something, or a particular sort of ritual, or some piece of writing that you always bring along to read, or whatever. Anything you want.
Okay, that's nice.
But yeah,
that's
I'll put that in the chat as well. As always, if you think of anything between now and sort of the week of next story time, do let me know if you've got any further things. But I'll try and include these ones that we have so far. It looks good, very sort of superstitious midwinter feelings for our next story, I think.
That sounds fun. Yeah.
It should be a bit of fun. So July 8th.
We could invent a superstition.
You could invent a superstition. That's an interesting one. So yeah, you can invent a superstition. You can also invent a new
no cheese after midnight.
That's a good one.
That's not superstition, that's common sense.
So is Fraser now in Australia knowing the people who have the solstice party?
Yes, Alina is one of the people who has the solstice party. So that's why she made the comment at the end, you've got to get me back for the solstice.
Yes.
As to whether he will or not, that's kind of an issue.
Yeah, that's up for grabs,
which might come into next time. All right, everyone. I'll see you all next time. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you so much.
And look forward to solstice celebrations next month.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.